Hey, Jody. Yeah, I'm just starting it now. We're going to record until about 10 after noon Central time. So it'd be just for about an hour and 10 minutes. We're going to have just go over this fairy tale called Sleeping Beauty or Briar Rose for around 50 minutes. And then, and I think it's going to be kind of participatory because I just like to treat it like a dream. So we'll go through each image and just see what you think about the resonance of each line, because I want to, and then here's what I was going to describe what we'll do after that, because I think Louise von Franz makes these a little too broad in her interpretation. She brings them out into the outer collective world. I thought we would use some of her analysis, but the ones that apply to our soul. You know, we're focused on our soul, the inner world of our lives, our anima, our animus, the soul within. But we would start, and I thought we kind of alternate between Jung's dream seminars, which are absolutely beautiful, and everyone is there. Tony Wolff, Carrie Baines, Emma Young, a relative of the Kaiser, one of the Hohenzollerns, and then there's this wonderful woman called Linda Fears David, and she writes a little essay in there, which is one of the most beautiful essays you will ever read on the feminine. But we'll go through those dreams because we can amplify them ourselves, and then we'll see what Jung says about them. And then I thought we'd also maybe alternate with the active imaginations from the book called The Living Symbol by Gerhard Adler, who was one of the few people that was trained one-on-one with Jung. And and his book is with a patient who had she was a woman who never got married, and she had extreme problems with the feeling function, with the animus within. And so she was very much like both men and women of this modern age, where the thinking function is so overvalued. And what Marion Woodman says, we both, men and women, need the feminine, especially men in the second half of their life. They develop their masculine function to its fullest extent. They don't need it anymore. You know, they need to be a complete and whole person and bring feminine energies in. And which brings us into the to the fairy tales. Now, up until the 17th century, fairy tales were things that were told. There's a wonderful book by two Welsh men that was one of the most beautiful reads I've ever read in my life, of the storytellers of the Celtic worlds of the British Isles. And they would only tell these tales after Samhain, you know, after the harvest. And they would only tell them after sunset, and after everyone had eaten, and the hearth fire is burning, and everyone gets their pipe out. You know, that was the only time that it was considered the right time to tell these stories. These stories are complementary to both the culture and the outer conscious attitude, but also to the myth and religion that was prevalent wherever they were. You know, so these are compensatory expressions of the unconscious about both sides. Nature's protest. Okay, it's really nature's protest against both sides, both the secular world and the religious world. So this is this middle realm of nature's protest, and they're just everyone you read is just resonates from the unconscious. Where did they come from? Okay. Where do dreams come from? I mean, what Marie-Louise von Franz says is that these came from a person who was in a participation mystique with their own inner world. You know, I mean, they came out of that that sort of a realm. And by the way, welcome to Jan and everybody. If you haven't been here before, and would you put your email in the oh, and Marina is here. Welcome, Marina. I'm glad that you could make it this time. This put your email in the chat. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of go forward. Now, remember, every first session of the month is going to be, we're going to have a sacred circle where everyone tells their story. And then when we're done, we have made a circle, you know, so everyone's going to tell their own inner work, inner story. So that will be the first Sunday in October, and then following every first Sunday. That will kind of give us a break, but also gets us to experience the richness and the varied experiences of everyone here, you know, which is, I think, is very important, you know. But anyway, we're going to describe this fairy tale as of Sleeping Beauty. It's now one of the things about up until the 17th century, up until the thinking function started to dominate, when people talked of anything in books, they were describing things, they used descriptive qualities. You know, they used the qualities of the value of this, the feeling function, the sensate world, they actually treated it as a living presence. Okay, they spoke to it or described it as a magical power in their lives, you know, whatever it was. And this is like the magical herbs. This came from Michael Harner, who's has the Center for Shamanic Studies. I think he died. Well, he did die a few years ago. But I mean, he'd say, how did the indigenous peoples discover these magical herbs, of healing herbs, let's say? And he says, they spoke to them. They said, come to me, you know. I mean, these are people who were having a participation mystique with the master animals, their soul animals who really are alive. And you can say they're not, but try it sometime. You'll find out, you know, you'll know it's true when it happens to you. That's what Alexander Solzhenitsyn said. They said in the Gulag Archipelago, you know, when it happened, Jung said that people would tell him, when he would tell him about his experiences with these living presences, they'd look at him skeptically and say, well, I have never had such an experience. And then he'd say, well, I'm sorry, I have. You know, so there is no, you can't debate it. He experienced it, it was real, you know. So anyway, these are fairy tales are nature's protest against both the compensation for the religious world and the cultural world. And they are x-rays of the psyche. They really are. And you know, whenever they would bring religious characters into it, she has a couple of good examples. God comes into a fairy tale. He's stuck in a tree. He's sitting up in a tree. He can't get down. He has to have help to get down. That's how God appears in a fairy tale. And then another one, the Lord Jesus appears in a fairy tale. And he appears, he's taking St. Peter to a tavern, and he tricks him so that the tavern owner beats him up, you know. So that's how the fairy tales kind of deal with these things. But anyway, that we'll just kind of get into this fairy tale of Sleeping Beauty, and maybe we can get a little input on it. And each line of it, because each line, it just resonates very strongly for me. And because it's so, you know, Marie-Louise Franz says these are the most authentic contents that we have of the literary world. She says they're really more genuine than myth because they're so close to us as humans, you know. And I remember, of course, they came at this time of where, well, if you really want to describe the science of that time or the epistemology of that time, it was alchemy, you know. I mean, you describe things in qualitative terms. And, you know, the one thing I'm wondering too is, does the thinking function really exist in the unconscious? You know, I mean, it's the archetypal meaning of the outer world. You know, I mean, it is, but does it really exist in the unconscious? I don't know. That's my own speculation. It's hard to imagine. I know the feeling function exists, and I know, but I don't know, because these gods are all so offended if you neglect them, and that's what this is really about. Is well, let's just go through it, because it is very reminiscent of Persephone disappearing into the underworld and coming out later at springtime, at harvest time. So it has something to do with the seasonal world, with winter, the dormancy of winter, and then the renewal of spring, you know. And but let's just go through each image. And so here we're just going to go through the fairy tale. Okay, I'm just going to read it and just go through each line. Now, here's the first line in her synopsis. In olden times lived a king and queen who lamented day by day they had no children, and yet never one was born. Okay, now in olden times, this means the land of the ancestors. It's really the image realm. It's the realm of images. This is not our world. This is not conscious reality. This is a different world. Now we call it the unconscious, but it really is the realm of images. You know, it's just this the realm of, it really is the realm of the water of life. You know, this is what we lack in the outer world. So it's in olden times, but it's really in the land where the water of life resides, you know. And yet the king and queen, or the ruling principles of that realm, have no children. They are barren. They are not, it's a barren womb of the woman, and the king has produced no children. So it's a sterile world. There's no growth. There's no new thing, you know, in it. It's a sort of a dead world, you know. Well, one day, as the queen was bathing and thinking of her wish to have a child, a frog skips out of the water. She's bathing in a pond or a stream, and said to her, "Your wish will be fulfilled before a year passes. You shall have a daughter." Okay. The daughter of the queen. So now the queen is near the unconscious depths. She's in the water, and a being from there comes up, and she, when she's wishing, she's weaving and spinning. Okay, wishing is weaving and spinning, and her being near these depths and being and wishing, her wish, this weaving and spinning of the wish, invites the frog, this little man of the depths, to the surface. And he tells her, he announces, he's like the angel Gabriel, you know, coming to the Virgin Mary, and he's telling her uh, that she's gravid, you know, she's going to be heavy with child. Now, isn't that a wonderful word in French for for expecting a baby? Gravid, you know, it means you have gravity now. You know, you're heavy with child, you know, and so she's attained substance through this miraculous birth. Okay, so and as the frog said, so it happened, and a little girl was born who was so beautiful that the king almost lost his senses. Okay, this little girl who was born, you know, is she's this little being who's so close to nature. You know, this is what the feminine energy is. It is nature. Now, you don't have to say that about real women, but you can't deny it about the feminine, the energy of the feminine, which both men and women need. You know, it's the archetype of life. Okay, so when this ruling male principle in this realm sees this little girl, she's so beautiful. She is so evocative of the beauty of being alive, of the archetype of life, that he almost loses his sense. Now, this is this uh, beautiful come hither aspect of the feminine world. It wants us to come into its realm, you know. And so sometimes you will find a woman who expresses that so beautifully. I mean, that's all women do that. I mean, they have this ability to if they don't have to use it, that some women who are more conscious know what's going on, and they can use it when as a weapon. Other women, you know, seem it is just this a power of magic a woman possesses that a man does not possess. You know, but the whole idea is not the real women; it's the feminine energy within them has that energy. The real woman doesn't really have it; she just has it within her, and she can make it talk. You know, but it is so beautiful. This woman, this little girl, that the king almost loses his senses. The ruling male principle is stupefied by the archetype of life. Okay, which is exactly what needs to be happened. The ruling male principle needs to be stupefied. So he orders a great feast to be held, to which he invites relatives, friends, and acquaintances, and all the wise women who were affectionate to children. Okay, so that's a very interesting. All the feminine wisdom that nurtures and develops the growing thing is invited to the feast. Okay, and he's inviting all the powers that are going to bring this new being into the world to be a fully flowering uh, whole being. He invites all that wisdom to come to the feast. But as there were 13 wise women, and he had only 12 golden plates for them, one was not invited. Okay, trouble is on the horizon now. There's a little horizon. So this is the fault. There is too much wisdom and too few plates in the outer world, you know. So you are bound to antagonize some aspect of the what you know. Hillman, James Hillman, you know, likes to say that the psyche is polytheistic. Okay, the psyche is polytheistic. It has all kinds of deities within it. It's got Mars, it's got Venus, you know, it's got the Great Mother, it's got almost anything you want to talk. There's a daemon for it, you know, and so it's very polytheistic. And you can remember, was it Agamemnon? You know, offended Artemis, and in order for there to be wins for his sails, he had to sacrifice his daughter, who Artemis was jealous of. So anyway, this is not this is the first cloud on the horizon. There's 13 wise women in the kingdom, and there's only 12 golden plates in the inner world. Okay, so as soon as the feast was over, the wise women presented the infant with their wonderful gifts: virtue, beauty, riches, and so on. But as the 11th wise woman gave her present, the 13th steps in suddenly. And she was in tremendous passion because she had not been invited. And this is very interesting. Every line of this is just resonates with me. And without greeting or looking at anybody, okay, she exclaimed loudly, "The princess shall prick herself with a spindle on her 15th birthday and die." Okay. Now, without greeting or looking at anybody, in other words, this is where it becomes a fairy tale of the feminine fairy tale. What happens when the feeling function is hurt or neglected or ignored? It becomes resentful and reproachful, and it invites animus aggression. Okay. So now this is if we're unconscious of it. If you're unconscious of it and your feelings are hurt, immediately what appears is not feeling anymore, but the flip side of feeling, which is animus aggression. And this is why this is a story of women, the feminine fairy tale here. And so that's what's happening. The hurt, resentful, reproachful, because she is neglected. And she announces the growing thing will never flower. It won't develop past the bud stage. It'll get to 15 and stop. Okay. So it will be allowed to reach just that age where it would be it is going to blossom into a woman with all her sexual powers. Her life will end at that point. So it's a pivotal point in a woman's life and in a man's life. Okay, but then all were terrified. But then the 12th fairy stands up, and because she could not take away the evil wish, but only soften it, she said, "She shall not die, but she shall fall asleep into a sleep of 100 years duration." So this 12th fairy is, or 12th wise woman, is an aspect of balanced feeling, and she has the proper consciousness in relation to the animus. She knows why the 13th one is upset, and she steps in and says, "No, the growing thing will not die, but it will lie dormant for an eon." Okay. Now, this is really, again, the myth of Persephone going into the underworld. Now, why did she have to stay there 6 months? Because she ate pomegranate seeds. She offended some deity. And so, again, there was sort of this offending the feeling function, of the which seems to be in a pretty important in the unconscious. That's why it's so that's why it's so flighty. It does experience eros, the related function, very, very much. And if you violate it wants to relate to you. It wants to have an I thou relationship with us, not an I it relationship. Okay. It doesn't want us to treat it as a concept or a potential idea as a dead thing. It wants us to know it's living within us. So you must treat me as a thou, not as an it. And when you address me as a I thou, then you are going to create a third thing, which is not me and it's not you, it's our relationship, this third thing. And it also we do the same thing with images. You know, when you have an image from the inner world and you treat it as an I thou and you have a dialogue with it, a dream, you draw the dream, you have a dialogue with the dream, you bring it into the inner world and it's no longer an unopened letter. And you bring it two things. You bring it the medium of expression, which is your sort of this unspoken tribute to it in an act of imagination of either drawing or coloring or painting or sand play or whatever. And then you also bring it the archetype of meaning. You bring it the logos, you know, and you bring it into this is the archetype of life. The image is the archetype of life. It is a representative of the realm of nature, and you bring it into the outer world, and you make a union of it with the archetype of meaning, and then you have created what alchemy says about the philosopher's stone. It doesn't exist in nature. Okay. I mean, in other words, ego can't create it. Nature can't create it either. The only way that this philosopher's stone or the symbol can come into existence is through the dialogue between the inner world and ego. You know? And through that, this bringing it into the outer world, giving it the medium of expression, and then also applying this words to it, the logos of meaning. Words, logos means word. And word, what is a word? I mean, we are these strange beings of words. You know, we have words. And our whole, where the snake has venom and the porcupine has quills, we have sentences, grammar, dictionaries, you know, stories, and each one evokes an energy. Now, this was particularly true before we had prose, okay? When words were all in verse or words are in song, you get the power of them, you know, and you shouldn't offend a word either. Words have power, you know, and each word has a power. But anyway, this is the so now the we're talking about offending a deity and the feeling functions that are in the inner world. The woman, there were 13 wise women and only 12 golden plates. So there is no seat for this energy of the unconscious in the outer world. It was neglected. It had no attention given to it. So it's very much like in that book that was written by the one that Marie-Louise von Franz did. I think it was it Thomas Aquinas or somebody? It was that Sophia. You know Tim, don't you? It's
you mean Aurora Consurgence?
Yeah, Aurora Consurgence. Yeah, the dawn of consciousness. You know, Sophia tells him. She says, she's the one who says, "Do not judge me because I'm dark and I'm covered with mire. It's your lack of attention that makes me thus." Well, this is the 13th woman, you know. And if you do not give her your attention and you do not give her your respect and you neglect her, she's still there. And her power and her energy is going to come manifest in your world, whether you give her the respect she deserves or not. So you'll either get her help or her revenge. It's your choice, you know. So anyway, this comes up. She will die at 15 when she's pricked by a spindle, and then the 12th one says no, she'll just be asleep for an eon. So then the king commands that every spindle in the kingdom should be burned, and so the pricking aspect of it is the animus. There's something about that pricking aspect is the animus of the 13th wise woman. Since her feeling has been offended, the flip side has come out, and it's going to manifest in the needle of the spindle, you know. And this is what is going to now let's talk one other aspect of this particular fairy tale. It's got so many levels. On one level, it's describing one woman and her existence from being born, growing up to puberty, and then a lot of this fairy tale, I think, is mysteriously talking about the time from puberty to adulthood. For Briar Rose is her name. Briar Rose means the rose that's surrounded by thorns. That's her name. She's a rose, but she's surrounded by thorns. Okay, now doesn't that describe a lot of us? That we're a rose surrounded by thorns? You know, I mean, we are a rose within, but we need thorns to protect us. You know, we need thorns to protect the most important part of us, and the most important part of us is the rose. You know, so this whole, and we'll discuss it at the end. Does it all make one circle? Think about that. You know, because this is it's got quaternity in it. Every fairy tale is supposed to possess all four functions. You'll find thinking, feeling, sensation, intuition in it. And in this case, I think at the end, we're talking about one person. Okay. But so the king commands that at the animus point be hidden. And Marie-Louise von Franz says one really interesting thing about men. She says, you know, it's one thing to sit around the round table and to make laws that are going to tell the gods what they can and can't do. You know, those are absolutely can't be enforced. And she says, when men get around the table and they tell us how women and men should be governed in the realm of Aphrodite and in the realm of Venus. So now men have come into this realm and they're going to set up laws. Here's how you operate in when Aphrodite is present and when Venus is present. And and Marie-Louise von Franz says those laws will never be observed in their realm, not in the realm of Venus and not in the realm of Aphrodite. Men's laws have no bearing here. And she says, so it causes a conflict. She says, if you are going to stick to the men's laws and observe them all, you're going to be very neurotic. If you're going to find Venus's, live in Venus by Venus and Aphrodite's laws, she says, then you have to live a double life, you know. And so it's a very interesting problem. And then she said there's a third way, is where you just do it openly. So you're defying both realms, and sometimes that doesn't end well. So it's just this conflict that the king cannot rule the inner world. ego or civilization cannot dictate to nature, and its laws will always override any laws that are set up by the civilization or by the ego. So now here's an interesting. This is the interesting. You tell me what you think about this. Okay. Now, on the very day when the princess was turning 15, the king and queen are not home. There's no one in the palace. She's there all by herself. Now, really? It seems there's a little inattention to detail. If you're that afraid of what's going to happen on the day on her 15th birthday, and here her 15th birthday comes, and she's there all alone. Now, this tells you that you're in a mythic realm here. This is something is going to play out, and yet it really has to play out. To me, that's what this line says. It is inescapable. She must go through this experience. Now it all here is something seeming like that this has to happen for her to become whole. Okay, so we're going through this crisis element, but this amazing lack of attention on the fateful day she's left all alone in the castle. What magic is this that brought this about? The growing thing is left to its predestined fate. The moment has arrived. So we'll just keep going and see what occurs next. So she looks around in every place she pleased. She's wandering the palace all alone. It's completely empty. And the parents are gone. The parental, so really what has happened, I think, really, is she has reached the age of where she's free from her parents. So I think that's really the meaning of this, is the fact that the castle is empty on her 15th birthday means psychologically that she is now is making choices on her own, although it doesn't seem it's completely by choice. But she comes up now. This is very interesting. She comes to an old tower, and she goes up the winding, narrow stair. So it's an ascent up into a higher realm. So there's some idea that she's going up into a spiritual, to the animus realm. Okay, she's going up to where the feminine, the 12 wise women no longer have power at the upper reach of the highest tower. So she goes up there, and now the door has a lock in which there is a rusty key. She arrives at a door, and in the lock was a rusty key. So there is a rusty key in here, an old and ancient tree. It's one that is linked to the pattern or the root of life. This is the ancient pattern of life, this key. And as she turns the key, and the door springs open. So she's like Eve in the garden, or she's like Pandora with the box. She again, the forbidden thing. There are any door in the palace you can open except this one. And of course, which one do you open immediately? You open the forbidden door. So she opens the forbidden door, and she enters the forbidden room, and there sits an old woman with a spindle spinning flax. Flax is very interesting. Does anyone know how you make linen? It's just a incredible long process to make linen, but I just wanted to show a couple pictures. This is from Ireland. This is a woman who is spinning flax, you know, and it was also one of
Yeah, I learned last year that flax has to be soaked for a week or so.
yes,
And then you take the fibers and you have to pull off the fibrous part and or the shell or the husk or something. And then the inner fibers are what you are able to weave.
yeah. And how did they ever discover that? And
Yeah.
now this is Queen Victoria. She was quite a flax spinner. Now it is a very feminine thing to do, to weave and spin. This is allows a woman to think on in her realm. While she's doing this, she can brood. See, the thinking that is closest to the earth is one of brooding. The one that is farthest away from the earth is the one of the pin set eyes, the ones that dissect things and take them apart. Where the thinking that's closer to the earth is one that's related to our mind while we're weaving and spinning, and so a lot of realization, and it's also and we'll get into this a little bit. It is the attitude of setting an atmosphere. I mean, what weaving and spinning really means is, well, and Marie-Louise von Franz says this, is that often when a woman would weave and spin when she was expecting a baby, all she would think about would be her baby. And so she's really weaving and spinning a pattern for the child. And she's establishing an I-thou relationship with it. So the idea of this type of quality of thinking is much closer to the qualitative thinking of relationship and the feeling function. It's thinking of the feeling function. It's thinking of the feeling and the sensate world, and it's married with intuition. And she mentions, that sometimes the women just do it even when they're angry. I mean, here's some my wife. We're about ready to go out to Colorado and Wyoming, and that's all she does the whole time we're there is knit pot holders. She's good at knitting pot holders, and then she gives them away at Christmas. We always go in the fall. But I don't know if you ever heard of the tri-coutues, these women that were, let me see. I don't have to print it, but it's not really, it's sort of a sour note, but while in the French Revolution, when these everybody was there was a bunch of women who sat around knitting as everyone was being taken to the guillotine. And I don't know what that means, but I just remembered it. They'd be knitting socks and those funny red hats that everyone wore, Well, anyway, so there's an old woman, and she opens the door, and there's an old woman with a spindle spinning flax, and so it's in this very hot, the highest room, far away from the 12 wise women. It's this animus women, and there is a woman who's been there apparently all by herself for 50 years. She's been there forever. How did she get there? Who said she could be here? How does she exist up here? And she says, "Good day, my good lady. And what are you doing here?" And she says, "I am spinning," says the old woman, nodding her head. And she's just this, it's just a wonderful image of this spinning and weaving. You know, it is really the it is the idea of spinning and weaving is really related to atmospheres that we set that then you know, like what was it we were talking about last time about the extroverted sensate when she throws a party. You know, it's got all this glitter and gloss, beautiful surfaces, you know, and it's very beautiful. But when an introverted sensate, one who weaves and spins, does it, it has very powerful atmospheres. It's not based on surfaces. Okay, so then the Briar Rose asks, "What thing is that which twists around so merrily?" And she's very curious. And she asks the question, unlike Parsifal. Parsifal does not ask the question. She asks the question. And then she took the spindle to try her hand at spinning. And scarcely had she done so when the prophecy was fulfilled and she pricked her finger. And at that very moment, she fell back upon a bed which stood near in a deep sleep. So she's really entered the realm of Persephone, this dormant realm. Now we're going to have to talk about what this means because it can mean a lot of things. Does it mean, what does it mean to go asleep for 100 years? Okay. And when you reach the age of 15, what does that eon of time represent in a woman's life? Okay. So let's think about it. I mean, but I'll just finish it here because it's very beautiful here, the description. The sleep extended over the whole palace. The king, remember the king and queen weren't even here. There was nobody in the palace. But when she pricks her finger, suddenly they are there. And it was like when Parsifal didn't ask the question, he wakes up the next morning. The Grail Castle is empty. He's the only one there. All his gears laid out for him, and he picks it up and gets on his horse, you know, and the moat, the gate at the castle is open, and the drawbridge is down, and he crosses it, and as soon as he gets to the end of the drawbridge, it's yanked up, his horse trips, and he hears a voice that says, "Be gone, you goose," you know. Well, now in this case, she wasn't, there was no one there, but yet there everybody was there. The sleep extended over the whole palace. The king and queen fell asleep in the hall, and all the courtiers with them. The horse in the stables, the doves under the eaves, the flies on the wall, and even the fire in the hearth all ceased to stir. The meat which was cooking ceased to sizzle, and the cook at the instant of pulling the hair of the kitchen boy lost his hold and began to snore too. Even the wind ceased to blow. So this is kind of a little bit of a winter image, you know, of this everything stopping. You know, there's several paintings of this. By the way, this was a wonderful. This story was gotten by the Brothers Grimm from a town in Cassel, and I believe it's actually at one time was in Flanders, and so I think it's Flemish. Is that right, Annette? Flanders, do they speak Flemish or not?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
They do. Yeah, it's a beautiful image. Yeah, and but also I'm just wondering about. I don't know. Is it the right time to question things or?
Yes, it certainly is. Go ahead. I mean,
Yeah.
there isn't much left, but go ahead. Yeah.
I was just wondering, is this kind of an internal conflict within the feminine also between, you know, because it's the feminine who puts out the question and then the girl falls asleep and
There you go.
is it I'm just wondering, because it's so common, this conflict would be very common, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, let me put, this is what sprang to my mind, and is, we know the rest of it. I mean, you know, the one who comes is, by the way, his name is Pirsa Foray, and so he's somewhat related to Percival, and let's answer Annette's question. We'll finish it in a bit. I just, you tell me, my life at my sexual awakening until I became adult, I was asleep, you know, I was unconscious. I didn't know what was happening to me. It was a complete mystery what was happening to me. I didn't know how to react. I was totally adrift. I mean, I was a stumbly, bumbly, awkward being, you know, so I had fell into this dreamland for quite some time. But what do you think? Let's just go around the room. Let's just, what does it mean at 15 years old for a woman to ask something about the animus, you know, about this spiritual aspect? And then, so she's at the age where she's about to become a woman. And then you have this long sort of a experience in dreamland. You know, it's much different than the puer, I think. What do you think, Tim? Do you have any ideas about it? I mean, this is just a dream. It could be anything. What was your experience at puberty?
I'm eager to hear from the women in the group. But
yeah, okay.
My experience as a man, you know, I think I was farther along than my peers because my parents were very, very nurturing and intellectual, and they encouraged all this exploration. But most of the guys my age were pretty clueless at that age, particularly when women seemed to be about 3 or 4 years more mature than the guys that I hung out with. And so I feel like my experience was there's this gap between the sort of the worlds that the males and the females inhabited. And I was full of curiosity about the mystery of that. And I don't think I was mature enough or aware enough to be able to put any kind of words to it, but I could tell that there's this real gap. And so I'm interested to hear what the women have to say about their experience.
Yeah, well, Gary, why don't you take it over and let's all go around, and then I'll quickly just, there isn't that much left. We'll finish it and then we'll have another just go around, but at about the end of it. Go ahead.
Well,
Gary, why don't you just start with Azine
sure.
or Annette or whoever.
Well, I think I'm going to start with Annette. That way I can just kind of go, you know, left to right. It'll be easier to keep track. So Annette.
I will turn off the recording at 10 after.
Okay, first of all, I also like to thank you for the beautiful cello music. It was so divine, it really was. Totally divine. But to come back to the question, yeah, I think actually in my case, my mother and her ancestors, they all tried to protect me by keeping me very young almost, or asleep in that way, and not to enter the realm, you know, and I think that's a common problem in also in the female world, that we're not initiating each other, and we're not really, there's kind of this protection within, like, and then it creates a lot of fear, and then you get all these kind of, like I only started later on when I had moved away from my home, when I was actually on my independent, then I started exploring and going out and so on, and dating and so on. But when I was at home, it felt impossible. Yeah.
You know, that's interesting how it duplicates the story, because, you know, while the parents are there, you know, that 13th woman whose aspect is being repressed never enters into any of the castle. And so, you know, it's just like this whole repressed thing. And then as soon as the parents are gone, it happens. But not only does it happen, but it's, you know, it's your your typical thing you repress, you know, it not only is it bad, it's 100 years bad. So, Miles, would you like to comment next? Are you there, Miles? So I guess I'll go on to Kathleen and maybe circle back around to Miles. Kathleen, would you like to comment?
Hi, no, no, I'm going to pass because I'm not feeling well, but I have appreciated every word, every sound, and all the comments, music included. The meditation that was really good, what I needed. Thank you.
Great. Well, Miles, it looks like you're back. Would you like to comment on this?
Sure. Yeah, I just think for myself, my going through puberty wasn't very well supported by society insofar as, you know, you get basically in junior high, you get the mechanics of reproduction, you know, and it's devoid. I went to a public school, so it was sort of devoid of any of the discussion of what I think should be happening, and that is namely this kind of discussion of the feminine energy and the masculine energy are in both.
The little bit that's left here. And again, what we'll do is we'll go on with Snow White, but maybe we'll put it in just a small bit in a week or two. We'll try to go through Jung's dream seminar. Just go through a few of the dreams, and then take in some active imaginations from the living symbol. And unless there's a book that somebody wants to read, but I just think it is we'll have this dream series, which I think is going to speak more to us than this book. You know, I mean, and the living symbol is about a woman, and the dream seminar is about a man. So it kind of gives both sides of it, and one gives you the dreams, and the other one gives you dreams and some active imaginations. But anyway, so we finished up that the sleep extended over the whole palace, which was kind of surprising. And then around the palace, a thick hedge of briars began growing, which every year grew higher and higher until the castle was completely hidden from view. So what this means is this girl of 15 somehow, and you don't know really why it happened. Was it because her father offended a deity when he only had 12 plates and there were 13 wise women, or was it because she became 15, or what happened? But so now suddenly the whole world goes to sleep, and Briar Rose is this rose with thorns all around her. There's this beautiful her treasure, and it's surrounded by thorns, so you can't touch it. You know. Now, this is very evocative, and I've really been thinking about it. There went through the land a legend of the beautiful maiden Briar Rose, and from time to time, princes came endeavoring to penetrate the hedge into the castle. But it was not possible, for the thorns held them as if by hands. Now the youth were unable to free themselves, and they perished miserably. Now this is very mysterious, and I'm going to give an image. I don't think it's necessarily, but I think this is, well, let's read the next part. After a lapse of many years, there came, so in other words, all this time, Briar Rose and the kingdom are sterile and barren. The growing thing is in stasis. Nothing is happening. There's no progress. And why is there no progress? Because the prince can't get through the hedge and wake her up early. Because apparently, if they can get through the hedge and wake her up early, she doesn't have to be there 100 years. I mean, that is implied in the fact that they're trying to get through the hedge through this legend of the beautiful maiden Briar Rose sleeping and endeavoring to penetrate the hedge. But after a lapse of many years, there came another king's son into the land, and he heard the legend of how many princes had tried to penetrate the hedge and had died. But the youth was not daunted, and however much the old men in the village tried to dissuade him, he would not listen. So now I just think this is, I don't think they needed to say this, but it says just at the time that the last day of the 100 years came, the last day of the 100 years is coincidental with the other king's son who will not be daunted comes. And he approaches the hedge. The thorns turn to large flowers. She's ready for him. She's either ready for him because the 100 years are up, or she's ready for him, or because of his appearance. Would the hedge have opened if he hadn't been there? You know, I mean, these are all big mysteries. And so now the thorns turn to fine, large flowers, which of their own accord made way for him to pass through. And then this is, again, very mysterious. They closed up behind him after he entered. Now, I can't help but think of this, and I don't mean to be graphic, you know, but one thing that James Hillman says, you know, is that the reason that the anima is one and the animus is many is because the ovum is one and the sperm are many. Now, I don't know how that applies, but what happens is when he goes through the hedge, it closes up behind him. Now, I don't know whether that means anything, but I mean, I just was thinking of that with the thing of the hedge, but I don't think it applies also to her becoming, but I think there's an allegorical aspect to this, you know, that the woman has these many suitors, you know, and yet the hedge only opens when the right one comes. Okay. When the right one comes, the door opens. So her door is closed until the man of fate appears. So it seems like the 100-year thing is not really applying, that she could not become a woman until the right man appeared. She could not become part of a union of man and woman. Let's put it that way. She could not become a part of the union of man and woman until the very correct, or the one who fit came. Now, who recognized it? Briar Rose? No, the hedge recognized it. Okay, and let him in. Okay, and it closed up behind him. And then he goes through. This is just beautiful. I'll just read it. He saw horses and dogs fast asleep, and in the eaves, and doves with their heads under their wings. The flies were asleep on the walls. The cook stood with his hand in the hair of the kitchen boy. The maid at the board with the unplucked fowl in her hand. The courtiers were asleep, as were the king and queen. And at last he came to the tower and opened the door of the little room. And then he went up all the way up. How did he know where she was? where slept Briar Rose. She's up in the room of this animus, waiting for him in suspended animation, and he kisses her. And just as he does so, she opens her eyes and greets him with a smile. So love is born. Okay. And they went downstairs together. The king and queen awoke, and all stared at each other wondrously. And it ends with this symmetry. You know, the horses in the stable shook themselves, the dogs wagged their tails, the doves flew away, the flies began to crawl, the fire began to burn brightly and cook the meat, and the meat began to sizzle. The cook gave the lad a box upon the ears, which made him cry out, and the maid began to pluck the fowl furiously. The whole place was once more in motion. Now, remember, this story is being told in after Samhain, after the fall harvest, after the sun has went down, after all the children are put together to get to bed, and all the women are starting to knit, and all the men are smoking their pipes, and they tell this story, you know. And what is also really interesting, and I don't know if you could speak to this, Annette, but in Norway, you know, all these little villages are so isolated, and I think you can experience this too, Marina, that the only way you can get anywhere by then is going over a mountain, walking way up over a mountain, coming down the other side, or you have to get in a boat and row, you know. And so all these, they don't really have, they might have a parson, but he's very uneducated, you know. I mean, in Norway, they would take these very valuable books, and they would, very valuable religious books, and they would rip the pages out of them and wrap butter in them. They used them. I mean, these were priceless books that they could have now. But anyway, it's just a wonderful, I guess we're out of time, but has anybody got any, Annette, did you have any comments about the Celtic realm of storytelling?
I don't, can you hear me? Can you hear me
Yes,
speak?
yes, yes.
Yeah, of course, it's so, it's so native to the Irish culture, and I think it's so in daily life, like it's so embedded in daily life, you know. It's not a specific time or so, although in the modern times it is changing also, I have to say, sadly. But and writing, it's very much in writing in Ireland, I feel. Yeah.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. And again, I think it's just beautiful for me, I don't know about anybody else, to spend a meditation before it starts, because I always have to bring, when I'm doing anything, bring my awareness from here down to here, you know, and this always helps me. But anyway, well, thank you for everybody, Annette, and I can't see everybody right now, but Annette, Nazine, and Marina, and Miles, and Jordy, and Jan, and Shayla, and Kathleen, and Carlos, and Dawn Marie. The two Shaylas. We got the other Shayla. Now we're going to have a session the first of Sunday in October, and maybe you guys can introduce yourselves a little bit. And remember, we're all on the same path. Nobody here is smarter than the unconscious. Who here is smarter than the unconscious? We're all learning from her, you know. So let's there's no smarties here. Okay, well, thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next Sunday. Okay, bye, guys.